A routine mail delivery turns into a shocking confrontation when a suspicious Karen calls animal control, unaware the mailman is transporting critical police evidence. As sirens approach, the mailman must make a desperate choice: protect the law or save his own skin. The midday sun beat down on the quiet suburban street as mailman Ethan hurried along his familiar route. Clutched in his bag were the day's deliveries: bills, postcards, and one thick manila envelope marked EVIDENC in bold red letters. Ethan's gut tightened. This was no ordinary mail. As he approached the Johnson household, a shrill voice pierced the air. "Hey you! Stop right there!" Ethan turned to see Mrs. Karen Johnson storming down her driveway, phone in hand. Her normally prim appearance was disheveled, eyes wild with panic. "What do you think you're doing, delivering packages at this hour?" she spat. "I've already called animal control. They're on their way to deal with you." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Mrs. Johnson, please, this is an urgent police matter. I need to keep going." "Police matter? My foot," Karen screeched. "I saw you lurking around, trying to steal our packages. Well, not on my watch." She advanced menacingly, brandishing the phone. Ethan backed away, heart pounding. He couldn't afford to lose the precious evidence in his bag, but confronting this unhinged woman could only end badly. The distant wail of sirens pierced the air. Ethan glanced around frantically. Where could he stash the envelope? His gaze settled on the Johnsons' neatly manicured lawn, dotted with plastic flamingos. Without a second thought, he threw the envelope into the bushes and raised his hands in surrender as Karen bore down on him. "See, I told you he was up to no good," she shrieked into the phone. "Get over here now." The wail of sirens grew louder. Ethan steeled himself, praying the police would understand once they arrived. He just had to stall Karen until then. "Mrs. Johnson, please, you don't understand. That envelope contains critical evidence." "Evidence? My foot." Karen cut him off with a venomous glare. "You're nothing but a thieving lowlife, trying to steal from hard-working families like mine." She took a menacing step forward, eyes gleaming with triumph. "Well, the authorities will be here any minute to deal with you. And when they find that evidence of yours, I bet you'll be the one facing charges." Ethan's stomach lurched. He gambled everything on the police arriving in time. But what if they didn't? As the sirens drew closer, he realized with sinking dread that he might have just made the biggest mistake of his life. The air was thick with tension as the sirens grew louder, their piercing wail cutting through the suburban calm. Ethan's heart pounded in his chest, his palms sweaty as he faced the unhinged Karen Johnson. "The police will be here any minute," she hissed, "and when they see what you've done, you're going to be in a world of trouble, mister." Ethan's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this predicament. He had to protect the critical evidence he had been entrusted with, but confronting the irate woman head-on could only end badly. "Mrs. Johnson, please, you have to understand," he pleaded, trying to keep his voice steady. "That envelope contains important police evidence. I can't just leave it here." Karen's eyes narrowed to slits, her lips curling into a cruel smile. "Oh, I understand perfectly," she spat. "You're trying to cover your tracks, aren't you? Well, I'm not falling for your lies, you thieving scoundrel." The sirens were deafening now, the flashing lights visible in the distance. Ethan knew he had mere seconds to act. "Look, Mrs. Johnson, I'm telling you the truth," he said, his voice laced with desperation. "That envelope is crucial for a police investigation. If you let me, I can explain everything to the officers when they arrive." Karen let out a harsh, mirthless laugh. "Ha! You think I'm going to let you sweet-talk your way out of this one? Not a chance, mister. Those cops are going to haul you away, and good riddance." Ethan's mind raced, weighing his options. He could try to wrestle the envelope from the bushes and make a run for it, but that would only confirm Karen's accusations. Or he could stand his ground and hope the police would believe his story. As the sirens grew closer, Ethan made a split-second decision. He had to protect that evidence, no matter the cost. The police cruiser screeched to a halt, its lights flashing like beacons in the afternoon sun. Two officers emerged, their hands resting on their holstered weapons as they approached the tense standoff. "What seems to be the problem here?" one of them asked, his gaze shifting between the agitated Karen and the visibly anxious Ethan. Karen seized the opportunity, her voice shrill and accusatory. "Officer, this man is trying to steal from my family. I saw him lurking around, tampering with our packages, and when I confronted him, he threw something into the bushes." Ethan's heart sank as the officers turned their attention to him. "Is this true, sir?" the other officer asked, his tone stern. Ethan took a deep breath, his mind racing to find the right words. "Officers, please, let me explain. I'm the mailman, and that envelope I threw into the bushes contains critical police evidence that I was entrusted to deliver." The officers exchanged a skeptical look. "Police evidence, you say?" one of them asked, quirking an eyebrow. "Yes, I swear it's the truth," Ethan pleaded. "Mrs. Johnson called animal control, and I panicked. I couldn't let the evidence get lost or compromised, so I had to hide it." Karen let out a derisive snort. "See, officers? He's trying to cover his tracks. I told you he was up to no good." The officers seemed unconvinced, their gazes hardening as they turned back to Ethan. "Sir, if what you're saying is true, you should have simply complied with Mrs. Johnson's request and waited for us to arrive." Ethan felt his heart sink. "But officers, the evidence is time-sensitive. I couldn't risk it being lost or destroyed." "That's not for you to decide, Stun," the officer replied sternly. "Now, why don't you go ahead and retrieve that envelope, and we'll see what's really going on here." As the officers moved to apprehend him, Ethan knew he had run out of options. He had to make a choice: protect the critical evidence, or face the consequences of his actions. Ethan's mind raced as the officers approached the bushes, their hands resting firmly on their holstered weapons. He knew he had to make a decision, and fast. "Officers, please, you have to understand," he pleaded, his voice tinged with desperation. "That envelope contains evidence that could crack a major case. If it gets lost or tampered with, innocent people could get hurt." The officers exchanged a skeptical glance. "Son, we understand you're trying to cooperate, but you've already made some questionable choices here," one of them said sternly. "Now, if you have nothing to hide, why don't you go ahead and retrieve that envelope for us?" Ethan's heart sank. He knew he couldn't simply hand over the evidence, not when so much was at stake. But resisting the officers would only land him in deeper trouble. As the officers moved to apprehend him, Ethan made a split-second decision. He bolted, darting past the stunned officers and into the adjacent yard, the precious envelope clutched tightly in his hands. "Stop right there," the officers shouted, drawing their weapons and giving chase. Ethan's lungs burned as he ran, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He could hear the pounding of footsteps behind him, the frantic barking of a neighbor's dog, and the shrill cries of Karen Johnson, who had rushed the sidewalk to witness the spectacle. "Catch him," she shrieked. "Don't let that thief get away." Ethan's legs pumped furiously as he navigated the maze of backyards, dodging fences and flower beds. He had to find a way to lose the officers and safeguard the evidence, no matter the cost. As he rounded a corner, he spotted a small shed in the distance, its door slightly ajar. Without hesitation, he darted inside, praying it would provide a temporary refuge. The sound of the officers' voices grew closer, and Ethan held his breath, desperately hoping they hadn't seen him slip away. Ethan's heart pounded in his ears as he crouched in the dimly lit shed, the precious envelope clutched tightly to his chest. He could hear the distant shouts of the pursuing officers, their voices laced with frustration and determination. Glancing around, Ethan's gaze settled on a small window near the ceiling, offering a potential escape route. But as he moved to investigate it, the sound of the shed door creaking open made him freeze in his tracks. "Come out with your hands up," one of the officers bellowed, his voice echoing through the cramped space. Ethan's mind raced, weighing his options. He could try to make a run for it, but the officers were sure to open fire, putting innocent bystanders at risk. Or he could surrender, but that would mean losing the critical evidence he had sworn to protect. Steeling his nerves, Ethan slowly rose to his feet, the envelope still clutched in his hands. "Officers, please, you have to listen to me," he pleaded, his voice trembling. "This envelope contains vital evidence that could help solve a crime. I can't just hand it over." The officers exchanged a tense glance, their weapons still trained on Ethan. "Sir, you're already in a heap of trouble," one of them growled. "Now put that envelope down and step away, nice and slow." Ethan's mind raced, searching for a way out of this impossible situation. If he complied, the evidence could be lost or compromised. But if he resisted, he risked being shot or arrested, with no guarantee the envelope would ever reach its intended destination. As the standoff dragged on, Ethan could feel the weight of the envelope burning in his hands. He knew he had to make a decision, and fast. The tension in the shed was palpable as Ethan stood facing the two officers, the precious envelope still clutched in his hands. He could feel the sweat beating on his forehead, his heart pounding in his chest. "Sir, this is your last warning," one of the officers barked. "Put the envelope down and come out with your hands up, or we'll be forced to take action." Ethan's mind raced, desperately searching for a way out of this impossible situation. If he surrendered the envelope, the critical evidence could be lost or compromised. But if he continued to resist, he risked being shot or arrested, with no guarantee the envelope would ever reach its intended destination. As the standoff dragged on, Ethan's gaze darted around the cramped shed, searching for a glimmer of hope. His eyes landed on a small, dusty window near the ceiling, and an idea began to take shape. "Officers, please, you have to understand," Ethan pleaded, his voice shaking. "This envelope contains evidence that could help solve a major crime. I can't just hand it over, not when so much is at stake." The officers exchanged a tense glance, their weapons still trained on Ethan. "Sir, we're running out of patience," one of them growled. "Now put the envelope down and come out, or we'll have no choice but to use force." Ethan's heart raced as he made a split-second decision. Summoning all of his strength, he hurled the envelope through the open window, sending it sailing into the neighboring yard. "No," the officers shouted, their guns barking as they opened fire. Ethan hit the ground, shielding his head as the bullets whizzed past. As the smoke cleared, he scrambled to his feet and darted out the door, his mind consumed by a single desperate thought. He had to reach that envelope before the officers did. Ethan's lungs burned as he sprinted across the yard, his eyes frantically searching for the elusive envelope. The distant sound of the officers' shouts and the barking of neighborhood dogs only spurred him on, fueling his desperate race against time. As he rounded the corner, he spotted the envelope lying in the middle of the street, its manila surface gleaming in the afternoon sun. Without hesitation, he dove for it, scooping it up and clutching it to his chest. But his triumphant moment was short-lived. The wail of sirens pierced the air, and Ethan knew the police were closing in. He had to act fast. Glancing around, he spotted a parked car a few houses down, its driver's side door ajar. Mustering every ounce of his strength, he sprinted towards it, praying it was unlocked. As he yanked the door open and slid behind the wheel, he caught a glimpse of the officers rounding the corner, their weapons raised. Without a moment's hesitation, he started the engine and peeled out, the tires screeching against the pavement. Ethan's heart pounded as he navigated the suburban streets, the envelope clutched tightly in his hands. He knew he was now a fugitive, wanted for his defiance of the officers and his apparent theft of the evidence. But he couldn't give up, not when so much was at stake. Glancing in the rearview mirror, Ethan caught sight of the flashing lights in the distance, the sirens growing ever closer. He had to find a way to lose them, to get the envelope to its rightful destination. As he rounded a sharp turn, an idea began to take shape in his mind. He just hoped it would work. Ethan's knuckles turned white as he gripped the steering wheel, his eyes darting frantically between the road ahead and the rearview mirror. The flashing lights of the pursuing police cars were closing in, their sirens piercing the air. His mind raced, searching for a way to shake off the officers and get the precious envelope to its destination. Glancing around, he spotted a familiar sight, the post office, just a few blocks away. Without hesitation, Ethan gunned the engine, weaving through the suburban streets with reckless abandon. The officers were hot on his tail, their shouts and the crackle of their radios adding to the cacophony of the chase. As he approached the post office, Ethan knew he had only one chance. Swerving into the parking lot, he spotted an open loading bay and made a beeline for it, the envelope clutched tightly in his hands. Screeching to a halt, Ethan jumped out of the car and sprinted towards the building, his lungs burning from the exertion. Bursting through the doors, he found himself face to face with a startled postal worker. "Quick, you have to take this," Ethan gasped, thrusting the envelope into the worker's hands. "It's urgent police evidence, and it has to get to its destination, no matter what." The worker's eyes widened in surprise, but before he could respond, the sound of sirens outside reached a deafening crescendo. Ethan knew the officers were closing in. "Please, you have to do this," he pleaded, his voice laced with desperation. "I'm counting on you." The worker hesitated for a moment, then nodded and rushed towards the back of the building, the precious envelope in hand. Ethan watched as he disappeared, his heart pounding with a glimmer of hope. But as he turned to face the approaching officers, he knew his own fate was now sealed.